Hello, everybody. This part of the short presentation will be in English to carry on with the international spirit of linked data, because I believe later in the afternoon we'll even have some Danish as well. So welcome. My name is Daniel Spikol. I'm a researcher here in the Faculty of Technology and Society in the Department of Computer Science, and I'm one of the researchers in the Living Archives project, and I'll give you a very brief kind of overview of the Living Archives project since we are the sponsor of this conference. So I always like to start off with a picture of Vannevar Bush's Memex machine, which is from an article in 1945 from Life magazine. And it's as we may think. And the idea behind a Memex is a device which an individual stores all his books, records, and communications, which is mechanized, so it may be consulted with exceeding speed. And the idea behind the Memex, I guess, to some extent, is the early history of cybernetics, which eventually, fed into computer science. So this is over, almost 70 years ago that we're talking about at the close of the Second World War. But today we're going to talk about living archives, and the tagline for Living Archive is revitalizing public archives into living social resources. And it's a project funded by the Swedish Research Council as part of the Digitalized Society program. And it's quite a large team, as you can see, and it ranges from the principal investigator of Susan Kozel to Professor Roger Johansson, a professor of history, Erling Borvinson, Marie, as you know, Elizabeth Nielsen, Anders Hog Hansen, myself, and Jacek Smolicki, and Richard as well is involved in it. And we also have hopefully 2 postdoc positions that are in the process or will become available again. More information is available at livingarchives.mah.se. And a little sentence about Medea. Medea is a design-led applied research center for collaborative media at Malmö University. Our work is built upon co-production where academic researchers work together with other actors outside the university, such as companies, organizations, institutions, and individuals. And we're focused much along the lines of the participatory culture. So how do we involve people in a design process, to create a better society? These are the Living Archives research aims, but like a good researcher, I summarized them into 4 easy takeaways. So it's the use of archive material, mobilizing the archive by moving it onto public platforms, planting archives in the urban context, and exploring how open and live data via mobile devices might become instant archives and tools for investigation and participation and inclusion. So this project will develop tools, methods, and best practices and is structured through parallel and complementary research strands such as performing memory and open data. Although I'm a little bit more on the performing memory side, so if you have questions about the open data side, you can ask Marie during the breakout sessions. A little thought about what we mean by archives in this context, although these numbers are slightly old and outdated, but 7 petabytes of content are added to Facebook every month. 300 million photos are added to Facebook every day. Well, as in 2012, so there's probably 15 million photos uploaded to Instagram. And 58 photos are uploaded every second to Instagram. So these are huge archives that we willingly or unwillingly create every day. So some things to think about, and this is kind of my open data footprint, is do we construct our own archives? Do we participate in other people's archives? And who has access to our archives? And maybe these days, who owns our archives? Since most of these archives are, in corporate entities or in government entities, depending on my profile. One thing to think about for living archives is this concept of not archives as things, but archives as practices. And I think this is strongly related to the idea of creating standards for linked data in a lot of ways. And how we archive from a more political standpoint is also how we remember. So you need to think about your last 3 days or your last week. Did you do any archiving without realizing you were archiving? And this is a picture from the Camera Obscura in Bristol where I was last week. First metal suspension bridge in the world, built by Brunel, the greatest British engineer in all of history. So Living Archives is really focused on participation and inclusion. And the question is, how do we participate in public archives as individuals? Which is a different concept than how historians create archives, since we generate such a large digital footprint and we have access to Europeana and other open archive systems. And how can they be inclusive and not exclusive? I know how many people have used Europeana? And how inclusive is it? Have you found anything on it that you were looking for? It's not such an easy tool if you're not a curator. If you don't know the language of a curator, then it's very difficult to draw out interesting things for Europeana. Although, of course, there's billions of links from Europeana to other things. One of the projects that we're working on is Life and Movement. Your story belongs to the story of the city. And this is a project for how to document the immigrant women who have come to Malmo to work. Like many of the large industrial cities in Sweden, there is a large number of people have immigrated here to work in the different industries. And for instance, in this case, there's not a lot of documentation about immigrant women who have come here to work in the factories. And the aim of the project is to document stories by interviewing, collecting life stories, and holding seminars and workshops with the different participants. And I think this raises an interesting challenge about how do we then create some type of data structure to store this and to interface with the other kind of archives that are part of the history of Malmo. And this is together with the Malmo Museum, if I remember correctly. The other project we've been working on is Effexity, Passages and Tunnels. And this looks at our archival footage from dance performances and how do we use all these archival footages that are available through different theater companies and dance companies and national archives together with contemporary dancers and sort out all the difficulties in who owns the archival material. Because in artistic practice, many people own the archival material, from the composer to the choreographer to the dancer to the stage lighting to the set design to the costume designer. So even though you can access the Royal Danish Ballet Theatre's archives, you really can't do anything with the content because it's all owned by everybody. And many of these people, of course, have passed away if you're looking back in the beginnings of the archive. So I wanted to show you a little bit of that right now as I wind up. This is from Denmark's first singing and dancing film called The Postman. And it's about a postman that sings and dances. And this is from a performance that we did at the Renew Festival for Art and Design in Copenhagen, and it's from the it's from the Royal Archives. And I'll just fire up the browser and switch things here to get an idea of what I'm trying to conclude with is that how do we create serendipity and magic from all this data? Because maybe life can become too quantified the more that we structure it. Let's see if it works. The magic of technology. Oh, that's a good idea. Oh, here we go. So now I'm going to scan the picture of the... Oh, of course it's projected differently. Just hold up the iPad, it says. So this is from the Postman, and this was a way for people to interact with archival footage. Someday, we hope in the future, this will be also streamed from above repository of data so it can change as you go. And then to continue along the line, this footage is from a contemporary Royal Danish Ballet theater called Corpus Solo, which is an offshoot of dancers from the ballet. But enough of dance, since you're here for linked data and not modern dance. We'll switch back to the presentation. And that kind of, in a sense, ends my presentation, but I wanted to leave you with this quote from Jaron Lanier, where to challenge you as people involved in open data and linked data to also realize that how do you create something that people can use, that is not necessarily quantified, that has an element of serendipity, in a sense, a leap of faith. Because on one level, of course, the value of linked data is the optimization of information. But this information has to be valuable to people. It has to be enjoyable by people, otherwise they won't use it. And we run into the situation similar to Europeana, where billions of kroner or billions of money have been spent to digitize, the digital archives of Europe and other parts of the world, but no one really uses it. So if there's any questions, you're welcome to find me around. I'll be in and out today because, of course, I have to teach. If anybody wants to teach some master students, you can come and talk to me as well. So thanks from me and the Living Archives team.